Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this session of Quispamsis Town Council for April 1st, 2025. I'd like to call the meeting to order with an approval of the agenda, please. Councillor Bigger, moved by Councillor Bigger, seconded by Councillor Thompson. On the question, please vote. Deputy Mayor, are you good?
Just Councillor Miller.
Councillor Miller, are you good?
Yeah, I voted.
Okay, thank you. Just checking. Motion carried 7-0. I'd like to have the Treaty of Acknowledgement and Moment of Reflection by Deputy Mayor Scryer, please.
We would like to respectfully acknowledge that Quispamsis exists on the traditional territory of the Walastiqui, Maliseet, and Mi'kmaq people, whose ancestors, along with the Passamaquoddy tribes, signed the peace and friendship treaties with British Crown in the 1700s. We would like to take this moment to pay respect to the elders, past and present, and the descendants of this traditional territory. And may we remind ourselves of the importance, the work that we have here before us tonight. May we make good decisions without prejudice or bias, and always in the best interest of our community, which we are here to serve.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Scryer. I have a few comments this evening, so sit back and buckle up because there are more than just a few. So I'd like to thank the KV Minor Hockey Association for their invitation to drop the puck in the ceremonial face-off before the championship game on Sunday for the U15 provincial tournament at the Qplex this weekend. The Negwak Tigers won the tournament and took home the hardware. I spoke to a variety of people Saturday and Sunday at the Qplex during the games who said the venue was beautiful and that the tournament was exceptionally well run. Thank you to the organizers, coaches, and referees, and to the volunteers, parents, and teams from every corner of New Brunswick. Another wonderful win for the Qplex, and congratulations on a wonderful event. March 26th and 27th were Provincial Advocacy Days, which were organized by the Union of Municipalities of New Brunswick. Advocacy Days allowed leaders to meet with the Premier and ministers, along with breakout sessions with key civil service staff to discuss current and future challenges and successes. The meetings were very successful to promote our town to New Brunswick and government officials. I was honored to join our Lieutenant Governor, the Honorable Louise Imbo, and Quispamsis MLA Aaron Kennedy recently at the 40th anniversary of the ARCF in St. John. ARCF contributes so much to the quality of the francophones in our region, so congratulations to them on 4 decades of advocacy and hard work. Also, last month, I participated in the Mayor's Panel of the Empowering Women in Business 2025 at the St. John Conference. I highlighted the many wonderful experiences and challenges leading and representing our community, and noted the need for continued progress in involving women in key business and roles in politics. Thank you to the conference organizers for the invitation. Last Monday, I attended a swearing-in ceremony for the new chief of the Kennebecasis Regional Police Force, along with Councillors Luck, Olson, and Bigger. Chief Young comes to us after a lengthy service with the St. John Police, where he most recently was acting deputy chief. We welcome Chief Young and offer congratulations. And also congratulations to outgoing Chief Steve Gordo on his retirement, and thank you for his 3.5 years of very strong leadership in the Kennebecasis Valley. Congratulations goes out to Catherine McRae of Quispamsis on being awarded the King Charles III Coronation Medal. I was very proud to attend the award ceremony recognizing Catherine, who has blessed all of us with her valuable time as a dedicated and hardworking volunteer with various events in our community. Not only does she volunteer, She takes on leadership roles, and her contributions have been immeasurable. I would like to congratulate Jiwoo Song, a high school student from Quispamsis, who has been selected as a recipient of the 2025 edition of the Vimy Pilgrimage Award. This prestigious program brings students from across Canada for an 8-day learning experience in France and Belgium from April 3rd to the 10th. Through visits to museums, cemeteries, and historic battlefields from the First World War, participants explore key historical events from multiple perspectives. The program's theme-based approach encourages critical engagement with history, highlighting both well-known and lesser-told stories. It was nice to see the sun come out this afternoon after the recent mix of rain and snow and rain. I know many of you are thinking about the 97.3 wave pool at the Qplex and hoping for lots of sunny days ahead. The pool is scheduled to open on June the 7th. Registration for swimming classes begins on May the 6th. All of this and more information about the pool can be found on our website, quispamsis.ca, under the recreation menu. Click Qplex and the 97.3 wave pool. You still have time to nominate an outstanding volunteer in our community for the 2025 Quispamsis Volunteer Recognition Award. The town annually recognizes the important contribution that our volunteers make through many organizations, community groups, schools, churches, and more. These volunteers will be invited to attend a special presentation right here in their honor on April the 15th. The nomination form is available on our website, quispamsis.ca, under applications and forms. Submissions will be received here at the town until April the 7th, and those can be sent by email. CN Railway has advised the town that the right-of-way vegetation maintenance program will be active in Quispamsis and across Canada between April and October. In accordance with Transport Canada requirements, the program helps maintain clear sight lines for motorists and pedestrians at crossings while mitigating potential risk to railway operations. Exact dates of the maintenance in Quispamsis have not been identified, but a frequently updated schedule is available at cn.ca/vegetation. The town will also provide updates when information becomes available. National Dental Hygienist Week is celebrated annually from April 4th to the 10th, highlighting the importance of maintaining good oral health practices while helping Canadians to understand the vital role those dental hygienists play in the healthcare system. This year's theme is Oral Health for Total Health, which reminds all of us that taking care of our mouth, teeth, and gums positively impacts other aspects of our lives. Quispamsis Town Hall will be lit up in purple to mark National Dental Hygienist Week starting April the 4th. Finally, today marks the eve of what are supposed to be more tariffs being levied on Canadian products entering the American marketplace. As the leadership of our own country continues to advocate for a resolution to these recent challenges with our neighbors, I've received a rather patriotic request from a resident of our community. So a Quispamsis resident has requested that all of us try to display a Canadian flag on our property, on a pole, in a window, or whatever works for you. Maybe have a contest at home and see if your children and grandchildren will make flags and display them in your windows. Wave the flag to represent our Canadian values, our beliefs, and our resolve. My Canadian flag is swaying in the wind as we speak. Our flag, our country, Canada, strong and free. Thank you. Looking for a disclosure of interests. Seeing there none. Presentations. This evening, we have the honor of having two politicians with us, aside from the politicians who join me here at the table, not to leave them out. So we have, as you know, a federal election coming up, and this is a new riding that we have now. So we once belonged to the riding of, can't remember, Fundy Royal, I guess. And now we are part of the St. John Kennebecasis Valley riding. So this evening we have two visitors with us. We have Wayne Long, representing the Liberal Party of Canada, in attendance, and we have Melissa Young of the Progressive Conservative Party of Canada here to speak tonight. We're going to give them about 15 minutes each, and then we're going to have a question and answer period for about 20 minutes where they can both field the questions as they come in, and I will moderate that question period. So this evening, I will let you two decide who you would like to have come to the podium first. Welcome, Mr. Long. Nice to see you here this evening.
Council, Deputy. You're right, Your Worship. The riding has changed. I've lost West St. John, which was tough for me to do, but I've gained Quispamsis. So I'll give you a little bit of history for me. I was married to Denise in 1988, and the first house we built was on Ashfield Drive East, actually. And we were young, moved to I think at that point, a small town called Quispamsis. And we loved living on Ashfield Drive. And from there, we moved to Queensbury Drive in Woodley Park. And George Queen built the house. And I look around this table, or I look around your horseshoe, and I see some familiar faces. Denise was the first recreation manager that the town of Quispamsis ever hired. And it was Emil. I think Mary was involved. I know Gary wasn't involved, but Gary was the town engineer at that point. And I remember Denise working upstairs in the Quispamsis arena with a few other people, and starting recreation programming for the town. And at that point, the town was still kind of young and growing. And when Denise left, when we left Quispamsis, that's when Dana was hired right after Denise. So that's a little bit of history for you. And, just to tell you how much, and I know you know this, you've grown. When we were in Woodley Park and Queensbury Drive, there was nothing up the hill. Like, Queensbury Drive was it. And when you go out there now, I mean, it's a city in itself. The growth is absolutely unbelievable. And Quispamsis is obviously one of the fastest growing, arguably, towns in certainly Atlantic Canada. And, you're in the big leagues now. You hosted the under-17s at the Qplex, a world or a national event. You have the Qplex, which is, I think, one of the nicest facilities, certainly in the region. And you are growing. But with growth also comes challenges. And I'm here to tell you, if I'm lucky enough to, be reelected and lucky enough to represent Quispamsis, I want to work with you. I want to work with you to address those challenges. I was asked once by a municipal official in Miramichi, how long do your mayors normally wait to meet with you? And I'm like, what do you mean, meet with me? Like, Nancy and Donna, text me. We talk basically daily. I talk to the councillors daily. And I'm like, what do you mean? She said, well, I had to wait 2 weeks to get an appointment with my MP. And I'm like, well, that's not how I operate. I will always be available and accessible to you. You need support. You need federal government support. Let's talk about the Housing Accelerator Fund. And I know that's certainly a bone of contention, I'm sure, for many, many of you. I'm here to assure you that I believe the request was $3.5 million. Is that correct? The second one? Oh, was it? You honed it down. You will get that funding if we go back as a government. Our government believes in the Housing Accelerator Fund. Now, we won't be overly partisan tonight, but obviously, the other government wants to cancel that fund. We want to continue with that fund because we think it unlocks growth. We think it unlocks housing for you. The other fund is the Canadian Housing Infrastructure Fund, the CHIF, if you will. And that one is like more of a bilateral one that you'll work with through the provinces. So, I have a great relationship, obviously, with your minister, Aaron Kennedy, and, we would work hand in hand to make sure that that funding was available to you. So my job on that is to work with Infrastructure Canada, to work with housing, to take proponents, towns' requests that go up really through the province on CHIF and make sure that, my areas get their fair share of funding. I think it's fair to say, if you look at St. John and Rosse, the old adage that before I ran, I always used to hear, well, how come Moncton gets this and how come Fredericton gets that? It's like not that way anymore. St. John gets their share and Rosse gets their share of funding. It's because I'm an advocate. Like I have a whiteboard in my office. I love going to Ottawa. And I love sitting on my committees and I love doing speeches in the House of Commons. But in the end, I'm there to deliver for my riding. That's why I'm there. So, Wednesdays are my special day in Ottawa. I have Atlantic Caucus. I get to sit around the table with, people like Dominic LeBlanc and Sean Fraser and, other key ministers, Jeanette Pettipaw-Taylor, and I get to advocate for those projects. I always have my list, and I say, look, we need to talk about this and that. And I think, again, my track record shows that I have delivered for Rosse, and I have delivered for certainly St. John. And I want to continue doing that. And I believe that, the sky's the limit as long as you are supported and you have accessibility to those funds. So it's about working with proponents and, MPs, whether it's Melissa or myself, like we just don't get funding. Like we work with towns that submit applications. We work with nonprofits that submit applications. Historical societies that submit applications. And my job is to get up there, knock down, kick down doors, meet with ministers, the right people that make those decisions. I've got 20 plus years of international business experience. I was in the aquaculture business. I traded and traveled extensively in the northeastern seaboard. I traded and traveled extensively through Europe. I know those markets. I know the connections. I know what it takes to trade. I have relationships already in those markets. And obviously, I'm committed to the region. I brought the St. John Sea Dogs here in 2005 with Scott McCain. I think it's, well known, the success we've had as an organization. I'm committed to this community. I want to help you build, and I'm here for you. And like I say, I'm accessible, and I think that's one of the things that you'll always get out of me. You're not always going to get a suit and tie, but you're going to get somebody that's dogged, determined to deliver for their riding day in and day out. And my office, Jeanette, who's in my office, Jeanette Arsenault. Jeanette goes in there basically at 8:30 every morning. She sits down, she never takes lunch, and she sits there till 4:30. And she's there to serve the constituents of the riding, whether it's EI or CRA or immigration. And I will tell you, which is a good thing, what's happened in immigration. But, we used to have 5 immigration cases a week, okay? In 2015, we had 5 immigration cases a week. Now we have 20 per day. 20 extremely complicated cases per day. So we have a great team. We have somebody there that's there, like Jeanette in my office, to serve constituents. And you've got somebody like me that works hard when I'm here. And I go to Ottawa for a purpose, and that's to deliver for my riding. Maybe it's my business background and project-oriented. I want to see things through. Like, when people initially go to Ottawa, they're, all the best intentions for everybody. But they get up there, and very, very quickly, they realize what a big, massive, bureaucratic machine it is. And then all of a sudden, they start to realize, this is a little more complicated than I thought. This is a little more slow-moving than I thought. When I first started, again, I was an entrepreneur. I was with the Sea Dogs. We're going to do this. I'm going to hire him. I'm going to fire him. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. But you can't do that in Ottawa. You need to be strategic. You need to work your plan. and plan your work. And that's what I do. And that's how I've made a difference to certainly St. John Rosse. And that's what I want to do to St. John Kennebecasis too. I want to work with you. I want to have relationships with everybody around this table. I do already with some of you. I was at your door there last week. You didn't slam it on me, counselor, so that was a... We did. That's the first thing he talked to me. He's like, I want to talk about the accelerator. I said, oh, shoot, that's Counselor Miller. But in the end, look, with me, what you see is what you get. I'm transparent. I believe in transparency. I'm authentic. And I'm here to work for you. And I'll never let you down. I'm not always going to have yes for an answer. But what you're going to get from me is you're going to get hard work. You're going to get every bit of my energy to make this riding better. And I just want to congratulate you. I mean, the Quispamsis is absolutely beautiful. You have so much going for you. And the growth. I mean, I would argue that this rivals Rosse Avenue now for, I'm sure you do car counts. But what's there is just unbelievable. When we were here in 88, and everyone can attest to this, 88 and up to about 98, I mean, we might have had 2 restaurants down there. I think we had the Barnwood and Pizza Delight, and that was probably about it. So you should all be very, very proud of the growth and the momentum you have as a community. But, between St. John and Rosse and Quispam, we've got a powerhouse there. And it's important that you send the right person to Ottawa. And it's important that, I will say, that we elect a government that believes in programs and believes in investing. And as a government, we should be judged by how we reach out and treat our most vulnerable. We should also be judged at what we can deliver. And as a Liberal, and obviously with Mark Carney now, we believe in fiscal responsibility. We believe in building a strong economy. But if we can build that strong economy, that allows us to do programs that help people, that are transformational for people, whether it's a Canada Child Benefit or daycare or dental care or the housing initiatives. We're proud of those programs. And sure, we can talk about the housing accelerator just for a second, but, a lot of these programs now are direct federal programs, direct to municipalities, towns, and villages. They weren't even there before. And I know the expectation is high, like, well, where's the feds here and where's the feds there? Well, prior to us coming in government, they weren't anywhere because they didn't invest in those programs. We believe in municipalities. We want to work with mayors. Again, I don't want to be partisan here, but we believe that mayors do a good job across this country. They're not gatekeepers. Mayors do great jobs across this country. They have major challenges. They don't get enough funding from the provinces. So that's why we're there to offer direct funding for you, your worship, your council, and we want to help you grow. And I want to be part of your growth. That's basically all I got. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're going to hear now from Melissa Young, Canadian representative on the Progressive Conservative Party. Welcome, Ms. Young.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here this evening, taking the time out of your busy schedule. I'm going to set the timer for 10 minutes, stop it at 5 because I don't know how to do it otherwise, and then I'll put it on for another 10. How's that?
Fair enough.
Okay.
We'll work with that.
You go right ahead.
Great. Thank you so much, Your Worship and Council. I'm very pleased to be here with you tonight. I've spoken to a lot of municipalities across the country, and I've worked with a lot of them in many different capacities, which I'll get into in a moment. But I just wanted to share a little bit, about myself to begin with. I was born in Fredericton, raised in a little place called Ripples. Some of you may or may not know where that is, but if you do not, it's near Minto, and I graduated from Minto High School. So grew up on a farm. Also, we had a sawmill, and my dad was a fisherman as well. My mom was a secretary at UNB. If you ever got a parking ticket and you were a UNB student, you probably met my mom because that's who you had to go pay. She was the secretary at the desk there for about 30 years, actually. So I have lived in New Brunswick my entire life. I did spend some time, obviously, in Ripples until I left, graduated high school. I then moved into Fredericton to go to college. I lived in Marysville for a spell and then back to Ripples again when I bought my first home when I was 22. And then I came to St. John in 2001, and I've been here ever since. St. John area, I've lived out east. I lived on the west side. I've lived in Grand Bay Westfield, and I now live like my counterpart here, Wayne, on the Kingston Peninsula. So spend a lot of time in Quispam, come over here quite a bit. So this is where we get our groceries. This is where we do most of our shopping. So it's closest for us as well. So in my working career, I've had various trade-related jobs up until I finally went back and went to college. Then I went to work for the Carpenters Union. I was with them for 17 years in various capacities, started out doing mainly administrative officer work, moved into being a union rep, their training coordinator, and I ended my career establishing the Carpenters Training Center of New Brunswick, which was in St. John on Ashburn Road. And with that experience that we had there, it was pretty amazing. I built a lot of houses here in Quispam for people in this area. And what we did was we partnered with employers in the area so that we didn't undercut that market. Glenhar was actually one of the builders that we partnered with. And we built about 10 homes here in the Quispam area for individuals that would not have been able to get a mortgage otherwise. So no charge for the labor. We did it with our students from the school. And we were able to get about 10 families into homes here in this area. So, and that's just in this area. We did homes in St. John with St. John Nonprofit Housing as well. I built several duplexes for Narendra Singh's group as well. After my stint with 17 years with the union, I got a tap on the shoulder from the province of New Brunswick, and they asked if I would come and do some policy work for them around rewriting the legislation for apprenticeship and certification in New Brunswick. I was the vice chair of that board. My tenure had come to an end, and they were redoing the act. So I did do that. That was under, I went there during the Sean Graham government is when I started, but I had, I think, 4 premiers while I was there, 3 or 4, there were a few. We were very successful with that. I started there in 2009. In 2012, we enacted the new act, and today it is the best apprenticeship act in Canada and has been recognized as such. So I'm pretty proud of that work that I did with the team that I had. As a result of that, the Council of Atlantic Premiers then tapped me on the shoulder and asked if I would do the same thing, but for all of Atlantic Canada. So I successfully worked with a team in all 4 provinces with 4 different premiers with 3 different colors, 3 different parties, and but hats were hung at the door and the work got done, and we were successful in harmonizing 23 different pieces of legislation around apprenticeship and certification in Atlantic Canada. I then moved on to the National Electrical Trade Council, where I was their executive director. I had an office in Rossay. I worked right out of here. It was a national organization, but I set up shop here in New Brunswick in this area. And my staff were all from here as well. So that is an organization that oversees the electrical industry for all the unionized electricians and about 30,000 employers across the country. So we did most of the curriculum and training development, and we also did a lot of lobbying as well. So been to Ottawa quite a few times, to say the least. So, and of course, as most of you know, I'm sure you've heard, I did spend some time in Ontario. I did commute back and forth. My husband's here with me tonight because we haven't really seen each other too much in the last 3 years. But I commuted back and forth. Doug Ford had asked if I would come up and do what I did for Atlantic Canada in Ontario, which I did. I was the inaugural CEO for their Skilled Trades Ontario from January 2022. Wrapped up there in November. Was asked to stay. I said, no, I'm going to go home, and that's when I made my decision that I was going to run for the Conservative Party of Canada. So I've never actually lived in Ontario, just so to make that clear, that point clear. Just a few accolades about myself. I am a recipient of the St. John Board of Trade Big Heart Award, and that's the work I did around building housing in the area. Also recipient of Labour Force Development Award for workforce development for all the work I've done around government, setting up boards of directors, and working with various organizations. I've written hundreds of millions of dollars worth of funding proposals, and I've also, when I was with government, was on the other side of the table reviewing and approving proposals. And one of the things that I can tell you that government lacks in a lot is actually helping organizations with their proposals. So I don't know what happened with your accelerator fund, your 3.5 million, but the process normally would be, from my standpoint, when I actually did that role, was we would work with the proponent to help them be successful in their application. So that is something that I'm committed to taking forward with me as a skill with the new government. Other than that, that's really the bigger part of what I've done in my career. I won't get into too much more detail about that. I'm also an entrepreneur. I own 3 businesses, all based here out of New Brunswick as well, based out of my home actually now. COVID caused me to have to close my office in Rossay, and everybody moved back home. I do sponsor several charities in charitable organizations in this riding. They're all in this riding, actually. I don't sponsor anything outside of the riding, and that includes St. Joseph's. I'm sure you might be familiar with the Aaron Appleby Breast Health Fund. That is my biggest charity that I support, so I do a lot for them. And I'm a strong advocate for our most vulnerable. So addictions is a big deal for me. One of my dear friends just lost their son a week and a half ago to fentanyl here in St. John. But we're hearing about it every day. So that's a big deal for me. How can we tackle the opioid crisis that we're having? And it is a crisis as well. And violent offenders is another one. Most of you are familiar with the Tanya Shad case that happened in Rossay many years ago now, or a few years ago. That is a group that I do sponsor as well, and I'm very active with them. So I do have a proven track record about myself with all levels of government, and also private industry and not-for-profit organizations. I've worked with all of them. My key thing I like to do is bring people together to reach consensus and move our agendas forward. I want to share, my expertise that I've gotten over the last 33 or 34 years in my working career, and bring that back to this region and really make Quispam, Rossay, and St. John the powerhouse that it needs to be through investment, that being an energy corridor here, as well as economic investment and attracting business to the area. Millennium Drive should be full of businesses. It's grown substantively since the road was put in, but I think we have a long way to go to fill it up, and let's get there in a short time is kind of where I'm at in that piece. So as far as some issues here in this part of the riding in Quispamsis, I did do a little research. I know the Housing Accelerator Fund, there have been some applications on that. I'm not so sure the fund is the right way to go. There haven't been a lot of successful applicants in New Brunswick. Most of the money so far has gone to the Fredericton area. So we need to take a look at that and find out, what are the better ways to do business. Clean water and wastewater. I've been out door knocking for the last week and a half or week and a bit. And I did not realize how big of an issue it was in Quispam until I actually saw it for myself. It's a very big issue in this community, which I'm sure council is well aware of and want to see it addressed. This community has grown bigger than I've seen any other place grow. Calgary would be the only other place I could compare to going to and from and seeing the expansion. And it's just absolutely insane how quick this area is growing. And we need the infrastructure to support it. And I don't see that it's here. So our government is certainly, if elected, that is a commitment that I can make. I will work very hard for you and fight for you to get the infrastructure that you need in this community. So with that, I think most of you are well aware of what our plans are. The leader has been here and expressed most of those, and they've been widely put out there by the media as well, I guess, for lack of better terms. But the leader was here yesterday, and he was very impressed, of course, with this area. I did take him on a little bit of a tour. So he got to see the whole riding and what it entails. It's not the riding that it used to be. We've picked up a pretty substantive community here with the town of Quispamsis. So with that, I think I will close off and leave it to you, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Ms. Young. Certainly appreciate your words. And now we're going to have a Q&A with council and with both representatives from the Liberal and the Progressive Conservative Party. So I see one light flashing right now. So if you don't mind, I would love to ask you to come up and just sit in the front row. That way it's a little bit easier if you're juggling back and forth. We don't have to wait for 6-foot steps up. We can do it in 2. So I'm going to provide 20 minutes for this, and there will be a hard stop after the 20 minutes. So I will go to Councillor Bigger, please. And Councillor Bigger or Council, perhaps you could say if your question is for both, if you'd like to hear from both, or if you're zeroing in on one or the other candidate. Okay, thank you. Councillor Bigger, please.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you to both of the candidates for availing themselves to be here. It's great, I think, for our community, especially with the redraw of the electoral boundaries. And I'll just speak for myself and say I think it's an exciting change from my perspective. And I think that Wayne Long made a comment that I think is very true, that we work in, especially with the inception of the Regional Service Commission, there is such a focus on teamwork in the greater St. John region these days. And so we often find ourselves looking, west from here, not so much east. That being said, we love our good friends in Hampton and all around the region, and we work, I'm on one of the subcommittees at the RSC, and we certainly all try to work together for the betterment of the entire region. But I like the logic of what's been drawn up. I grew up in West St. John, so I'm sorry about our good friends. Yeah, I know, yeah, sorry about that. But anyway, they've got good representation over there as well, I'm an old Lower West guy. This is a question that I did have for both of you, so however you want to, determine who speaks first. Mr. Carney has been here in the St. John area. Monsieur Polyev was just here the other day, as you point out. The National by CBC came here because I think that what's in common for all three of those entities is, of course, what we've all heard about St. John being the most vulnerable of all cities in relation to tariff exposure. And we know that that is almost majorically related to the high export capacity that happens by industry here in the greater St. John area. And we don't have an oil refinery in Quispamsis, we don't have a pulp and paper mill, but we have thousands of people who work in those industries in the city, and hence the importance of working as a team together on these issues. And so I would just love to hear from each of you about your perspective on what lies before us. The mayor opened tonight with her comments about us being on the cusp of who knows what. And so to the degree that we can know anything about what's going to happen tomorrow, the state that we're in currently, it seems to me that every political pundit that I hear on the news says that these are the issues currently that people are seized with, is what's happening in our country in relation to tariffs and the immediate sort of way that we defend ourselves as a nation. And so to bring it right down to our little neck of the woods, I would love to hear from each of you your perspectives on that. If you could just take a couple of minutes, I'd be very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bigger. I'm going to go to Ms. Young first, please.
Thank you for the question. And that, I think, is the hottest question in the world today, not just here in Quispam by any means. We do have to retaliate. There is no doubt about it. I think all governments are agreeable to that. It's how we're going to do it that may be a little bit different. I know our government is looking at how we can give liquidity to employers and businesses to help them be more competitive in their own markets here in the short term, as we work on a larger plan to be able to get them opportunities to export to the rest of the world outside of the United States. So the energy corridor is a big plan of ours. I'm a huge proponent of energy projects anyway. That's not the only game in town, and I realize that. However, it will bring great prosperity to this area if we can make that happen, which will require some legislative change to make it happen. But I think we can do it and we can get there. The other thing that we're looking at in our plan is providing those subsidies to help individuals who may lose their jobs as a result. I personally have family that lost jobs at the Irving paper mill just a month and a half and a bit ago. So, you know, it hits, I think we all probably know people that it's impacted, and that's just one. And I know they're blaming it on the power bill, but let's be realistic, there's probably a lot more to that than the power bill. So that's my answer on that, Councillor. I hope that satisfies your question. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Long, please.
I mean, we are in pretty uncertain times. Mike, to your point, National was here, St. John, the region is number one in Canada for impact. I've taken the time to talk to Irving and JDI and Cooks and Crosby's and Moosehead directly to see exactly how it's going to impact each and every one of them. And, you know, every situation is different. Case in point with Irving, with the refinery has said, and good for them, you know what, we're just going to tack the 10% on to the fuel that we ship to the Northeast sector. So that's not going to really, Irving's just going to pass that tariff on. Now with Cooks, for example, Cooks has competition from Chile and Norway and Shetland Island and Scotland and Ireland and so on and so forth. So a 25% tariff on their product is going to make them less competitive against other aquaculture companies, so on and so forth. With reciprocal tariffs, and we need to be careful what we do with reciprocal tariffs to make sure that that doesn't hurt our own industries. Case in point, Moosehead with aluminum. Well, guess what? They make their cans. Guess they buy their cans. So it impacts Moosehead. Crosby's is another situation. So, you know what? We need to be firm. We need to respond. I think, if I will say, Mark Carney is, I think we're certainly hearing it at the doors. He's comforting people. He's soothing. He's an adult in the room. I think he has a plan. He's got world experience. He's obviously handled Canada through 2008. Bank of England through Brexit. And, you know, as a country, who would ever think that the country to the south of us views Russia more favorably than they do Canada? So, you know, we have a challenge. As a region, we have a challenge. We need to make sure that any dollars that we collect reciprocal-wise goes directly to industries and companies that are impacted and hurt. And we need to, you know, batten down and buckle down and see what happens tomorrow. But, you know, one thing I think that we've all learned is that we can't depend on America as a trading partner like we used to. Those days are over. And, you know, being in the aquaculture business, I know how important the Northeast sector was to us. But now we need to look at other outlets. You know, I've got trade experience in Europe. We need to trade to Europe. We need to trade to Asia Pacific. We need to look at other areas where we can be less impacted. And we need to build our economy so that it's resilient against this, and that we will never be in a situation ever again where we're so dependent on one trading partner. Thanks.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Scryer, please, and I'm going to go to Mr. Long for the first response after Deputy Mayor's question.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Your Worship. My question has to do with early child care and early learning. And I would like to know both views on the National Child Care, not the check, but the actual early learning supplements. If your party plans to expand more funding for that, and if that funding will go directly or if it's going to continue to go provincially through the province. And also with that, maintaining what is already there. I remember hearing figures thrown around, maybe another 100,000 early childcare spaces for the country. I would like to narrow that down a bit as to what we're going to see, being a woman enabled to be in the workforce, continue to do what we want to do. We have to have the childcare provided to us. So that's my one. And my second one is on, if you'll indulge me, your worship, is on wastewater. The Canabacases River is one of the most beautiful rivers in all of the world. And we need to protect those rivers. And as you know, we have pumping stations right on the Canabacases River. And once in a while, when we have storms, we have floods. We all remember the flood of 2018, and the pumping stations went down. Where do you think that sewage was going? Besides in people's basements and everything else, what comes down the bottom of the hill. So we have been diligently, the town, over the years, trying to rebuild these. I think we're on our third one this summer, but it's a painful process when we don't know where the funding's coming from. Every year it's like, oh, we're gonna get another one done. And we don't wanna do the road until we get the pumping stations done. It's what comes first, the chicken or the egg. So I'd like to know what your plans are for Quispamsis with wastewater. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Long, please.
How come Mary got 2 questions?
She snuck
not
those in.
fair.
That was sort of,
You try to say no to her.
Look, with respect to early learning and, daycare, childcare spaces, if you will, I'm really proud that our government came forth with that plan. And obviously we had to negotiate, and, we finally got Premier Higgs to get on with the plan and provide funding. I remember when we were raising our family here in Quispamsis that there was a point where Denise, this was before she was working for the town, but Denise had to make a decision. It was cheaper, it was more cost effective for her to stay home. Think about that. The cost of daycare was so much. It was prohibitive for Denise to actually work. And that's unfair. I mean, obviously it's it's overrepresented that affects women obviously more than men. And the fact that we've cut daycare costs almost in half right now, and then within the next 2 to 3 years cut it down to $10 per day, I think is something that's very, very substantive and substantial. Now, with respect to daycare spaces, there's not enough daycare spaces. And yes, as you would know, Mary, we came out, dealing more with the public spaces. We need to also look at a hybrid model where we work in private operators into that model also. So I'm proud of the daycare program. Again, as Liberals, we believe that we're there as government to provide programs like that, whether it's a Canada Child Benefit again, or daycare or dental or what have you, to people across Canada. So we've got some work to do. I think, to be honest, like in whatever it's been, 3 years now, 4 years, that we have moved the needle substantially with respect to our daycare program, cutting costs in half, letting women get back to work, helping with employment, so on and so forth. So that's my daycare answer.
Mr. Long, I think I'll go to
Oh.
Ms. Young first,
Oh, sorry.
just to keep the balance here, because I know there were other lights flashing, and I'd like to give everyone at least one question if they care. Go ahead. So this would be on the daycare question.
Sure. Great question. And I can certainly respect that question more than you could possibly imagine. The $10 a day daycare is, it is helpful. But again, it's only for the public system. It does not help our private daycare operators whatsoever, which is where most of our children go, are to private daycare operators. Now, as far as the education side for our youth and our young, like our most vulnerable, are really 0 to 5, I'll say, that is a provincial jurisdiction. The money does come from the federal government, but I'll use Wayne's words if I can. Make the plan and work the plan. I believe in multi-year funding as opposed to so that you can plan. It's very, very hard to operate when you have to every year wonder what the next year is going to bring. I've been in that situation as working in the not-for-profit sector. You're constantly working for the next proposal that you have to write and the next amount of money that you have to do. So when the province, should we be successful and should I become, the MP in the area, one of the things that we will definitely be looking at is multi-year funding as opposed to single-year funding. And we will be looking at the province of New Brunswick. And my priority is going to be this riding, by the way. It's great that everybody will be putting in submissions, I'm sure, for many things, but this riding is the number one priority for me. So we'll be working very hard to make sure we can get as much as we can for this riding, because I do believe it's been somewhat neglected in certain areas, this being one of them, over the years. So we need to bring that back to the table. We will look at multi-year, and we will look at helping write those proposals as well with the proponent, whoever that may be. So if the province is writing it on behalf of all the municipalities and all of the different organizations that are out there in the childcare sector, then they need to come to us with a plan, because we're going to check that plan to make sure they're working the plan. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Councillor Miller. If there's time after the responses to Councillor Miller's question, then we will go back. So to Deputy Mayor Scryer. Councillor Miller, please.
Thank you, Worship. So I know we're running out of time, so I won't get too deep, but I want to thank both of you for coming here and presenting, and for both of you acknowledging too that Quispamsis, and I'm going to use my own words, I think we've got the short part of the stick in the last few years. So we've had Liberal federal, we've had PC federal, we've had Liberal provincial, PC provincial. We seem to not get our fair share of the funds, whether it's for roads, for water. We're one of the biggest communities. We have water in 300 houses when you look at it. So $70-some million to put it in. We're doing pumping stations, as Deputy Mayor was stating, that's costing us lots of money, but we're not getting the multi-year funding. The Household Accelerator Fund, and Wayne, you and I spoke about this the other day. I mean, we've lost round 1 and round 2. And so it's a little frustrating. I've been in here for 14 years. We don't seem to get any love from provincial or federal. Yet we do all the applications, we play by the rules, and we always say, no, we're giving it to somebody else. And I'm in politics too, but I detest politics for this thing that seems to go to wherever the things are. So I'm going to ask a question that has nothing to do with the province, but a little bit of Mr. Long was talking about, where we talked with Housing Accelerator funds, that the feds weren't in that before. They didn't do that. They didn't come to municipalities. So something that's key on everybody's mind when you're going to all these places is healthcare. Healthcare, and some of us have kids that are looking into getting into, whether it's nursing, whether it's doctors. I know that's provincial jurisdictions, but maybe that's time the federal to get in there. When you have more radiologists, or you have Alberta looking for more radiologists than what are graduating in all of Canada, that's a problem, right? When you have 7% of the people that apply to Dalhousie Medical School get in, but you can get into Australia and Ireland significantly quicker, that's a problem. So with that said, is there any thought of the feds trying, the federal government trying to do that? I know it has nothing to do with municipal, but it has to do with, most people here may have a doctor, but a lot of people don't. I mean, I've been here since 1970. I do have one, and having a child makes it easier to get a doctor. So it's more on the healthcare. What do you think healthcare could do for New Brunswick specifically? If you could answer that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Miller. I'm going to go to Ms. Young, and we've got about 2 minutes each for this in order to stay within our time frame. Thank you.
Sure, great. So we won't watch the timer then. You just give me the nod. Probably the second hottest topic next to what's going on to our neighbors in the U.S. with the U.S. is healthcare. And I cannot express enough, as somebody that has been an administrator of government programs for many years on both sides of the fence, giving money to someone and them not having a plan never works. I'm not sure, I can't speak to how the transfer payments come into New Brunswick for healthcare, but I'm going to make a real good educated guess that there is not a clear plan from the province on how that money is being spent, whether it is attracting talent into the province, or if it is, making our healthcare system, improving our healthcare system in whatever capacity it needs to be improved upon. A plan needs to be put forward. It's the days of wheelbarrows of money being shoveled into a wheelbarrow and sent off to the provinces. Well, here's your share for healthcare. Good luck. Let us know how you make out. Those are over. Our government, should we be elected, we'll be putting an end to that. There has to be public accountability on how money is spent and why it is spent the way it is spent. And the right people need to be consulted. You don't need a bunch of bureaucrats sitting in an office deciding how healthcare needs to work in the province. You need to talk to our healthcare professionals and the citizens. I mean, I've been down here for 25 years. I can't get a doctor here. I still go to Oromocto for my doctor, and I have specialists as well. They're in Fredericton because I cannot get any down here. Thank God I kept them when I moved here. It was just by fluke that I just kept them, but I wouldn't have that opportunity had I done otherwise. So it's my time.
Thank you. And Mr. Long.
It's a major challenge, and I spent some time with our health minister, John Dornan. When John was elected, I sat down with John and said, look, first off, I think he's a wonderful minister. I think if anybody's going to get in there and fix what needs to be fixed, it's John Dornan. He's been on both sides of the equation, so he knows it. That being said, I would agree with Melissa that it's not always more money in healthcare. It's how it's spent. It's how it's targeted. I think as a federal government, and I certainly work with John in this, and I've talked to our government on it too, that we need to make sure the money is targeted and used in the proper areas, whether it's recruitment, whether it's mental health, which is an epidemic. With respect to recruitment, we need to relax immigration. There's a lot of qualified doctors out there that are driving taxis right now. But in the end, it is provincial jurisdiction, but the federal government plays a role in working with the province, working with the minister, and seeing exactly what is needed to help fix the system. I think, sadly, I've just been through the hospital system with my mom here last month, and, there's a lot of wonderful nurses, there's a lot of wonderful doctors, there's a lot of great things in our system, for sure, but it needs a reboot. It needs a restructuring, and if I think anybody can do it, I think it's Minister John Dornan. But again, it's about teamwork, it's about collaboration. So as an MP for the riding, I've sat down and said, John, what can we do federally? How can we help you do what you need to do? So that's ongoing, and we're working on it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for being here this evening. You've certainly given us lots to think about, and your message has been streamed, so all those who turn on the tube and want to hear what both of you are representing, they'll have a good picture of who you are. So thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedules. And Council, if you would like to thank Michelle and Wayne. Thank you. Best wishes in the rest of the campaign, and we will. You may leave or you may stay. It's totally up to you.
I love you guys, but I'm not going to stay.
I've been to a few of your events, your concerts. Yeah. Pleasure.
Nice to see you.
Thank you. Thank you. He was well.
You're really going to leave. You're really going to leave.
Oh, yeah. We get doors and knobs. How late do your meetings normally go? Do they go quite a while?
I bring a pillow. You can watch it on YouTube.
Hey, thanks, Kim.
Thanks so much for being here. Certainly appreciate it. Item number 6, 6A, public hearings, Hampton Road, PID 00251843 and 302-40527. From single or two-family residential R1 to integrated development, ID, rezoning application. Staff report from Planning Technologies, Jennifer Jarvis. Councillor Olson.
No.
No? Okay, sorry. So this evening, we were asked on behalf of council, or tonight on behalf of council, I've been requested to and plan to consider amending municipal plan number 054 and/or zoning bylaw number 38. This day has been set in place for a public hearing, and anyone wishing to speak for or against the proposed bylaw amendment will be heard and considered by council. Each person wishing to speak will approach the podium, identify themselves, and they will have up to 5 minutes to express their concerns. So the first step is that the planning staff will provide an executive summary. We have that in our kits. Is there anything further, Mr. Colburn, to be added verbally?
Through your worship, I think the staff report covers most of it. The main items is basically a change in the ownership style, so moving towards a condominium style ownership, as well as reducing the number of phases from 8 to 4. That's sort of the main items that are part of the amendment. Thank you. And again, if there's any questions, I can answer.
Thank you. We now can have a presentation by the proponent, if you wish. Welcome back, and you have been here before, so if you'd like to comment anything further, you may. And after you are finished, that will be the end of what you will be permitted to say. Then I will go to anyone who wishes to speak for or against. I will ask our director or manager of communications if there's anyone online that wants to speak. And I'll ask that 3 times, and when we don't hear anything further, then we will proceed. All right.
Okay, thank you so much, Your Worship and Council. It's a joy to be here with you tonight with the sun shining and to come back just to present the changes that we've made in the aging in place community. As Mr. Colburn said, mainly it's the ownership structure, and we think that it's the best model, better than what I first came up with, and I think it will benefit our citizens of Quispamsis better. So just to clarify, people will be buying into the condo development, but also our company will be purchasing several of the units so that we can do short-term rentals as well for those people who can't purchase. So there'll be a rental option as well as a purchase option. That's the main thing, and reducing the timeline is I'm very happy with too.
Okay, thank you. Anything further?
No,
Okay, you may sit down.
thank you.
Mr. Rosell, is there anyone online? Thank you. Is there anyone who wishes to speak for or against the proposed amendment? Would you please come to the mic? And please state your name for the clerk. Welcome this evening. We're happy to have you.
Hi, my name is Sue Fraser. I live up on Pete Drive. My husband was here at the previous session, but one of the things we still wonder is the status of the handling for water. Whether there was talk about a water survey, but that was based on the number of units itself. With the unit number changing, does that affect the water survey? And what's going to be the timing for it versus town water? Because I think the last time half of it was going to be done before town water was available, and the other half was going to be after the town water became available to that area. Excuse me. And also wondering what the accountability is if there is any involvement with well activity. Who's accountable if our wells run dry? And how does that going to be dealt with? So those are my questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Fraser, for being here. So I'm going to go to Dwight Colburn. And Dwight, the questions on a hydrogeological test, and if there are any concerns, if wells are unable to be drawn, then where does that concern fall? Mr. Colburn.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through Your Worship to council as well as to the resident, Ms. Fraser. So in terms of the water, there will be still a requirement for a comprehensive hydrogeological study, or what we refer to as a water source and supply assessment. The reduction in the number of units wasn't to alleviate the need for that study. That's happening regardless. The reduction in the number of units was so you wouldn't trigger an EIA, which is an environmental impact assessment as required by the province once you exceed more than 50 cubic meters being drawn from the ground within 24-hour period. So the original proposal in terms of the number of units just put it over the threshold, which would have triggered it. So the plan was to actually to reduce the number of overall units by 3, which keeps it under the threshold of an EIA. However, it still requires a comprehensive water study, which would be done prior to any permits being issued for development. So that's an initial step that we would have to confirm there is water of sufficient quantity and quality to support the level of development. That just doesn't look at that particular property. It would look at all the well records within 100 to 250 meters in the area to examine what's happening in the wells in terms of the depth of the wells and what was available in terms of yields. They also look at whether there's been any report historically of well problems in the area. That's part of that process as well. So they do reach out to the municipalities from time to time to ask if we have any historical reports of well issues that have been filed with the municipality. And those are normally filed with the province as well. If there's significant water issues, they're usually part of that process to be advised. So in terms of if there are issues, as council is aware, we are very actively seeking assistance to extend the water line. The benefit of where this property is located, you're looking at in the order of probably 150 meters, 200 meters to connect to where the water system is. So you're not talking about extensive kilometers in terms of being able to provide municipal water to this particular development. We're also looking at this particular year undertaking the water expansion along Cedar Ridge. So there's water movement in terms of the system in this particular area. So there would be options obviously to extend accordingly. So if there is an issue, we would look at it in the context of the issue and we would respond accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Lane, there is an opportunity if you want to respond to anything. You can do that now if you wish. I misspoke when I said that that was the final. Sorry about that.
Is it on? Yeah.
Yes, it is.
I just wanted to comment that we appreciate the water issues and concerns that citizens have, and it is our plan just to construct one duplex this year in 2025 and holding off till the summer, fall of 2026 to put in more units in hopes that the town will have the municipal water coming down the hill that we can connect to. So we're trying to limit our timelines to line up with that municipal water coming into place.
Thank you. And PAC's written views were noted. We don't have to read those, do we? We've gone through that. Council members may ask questions if there are any questions at this time. If there's anyone wishing to speak for or against the amendment, please come forward. If there's anyone wishing to speak for or against the amendment, please come forward. Final time. If there's anyone who wishes to speak for or against the proposed amendment, please come forward. Seeing there are none, I will now go to council members to ask questions. Councillor Bigger, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just threw you to, well, either Ms. Lane or our planning manager. Is the apartment building the final phase of the project? It is, yeah, I thought it was, okay. I had a question just from Ms. Jarvis's staff report. And let me just find, it's in relation to, it's way down on page 4. There's a bullet point, it's the third bullet up from the bottom of page 4. And it says that Section 9D1A of zoning bylaw number 30, it requires minimum front line setback of 15 meters to any collector highway, as Hampton Road is recognized as a collector highway by the traffic bylaw number 27. The required front yard setback along this corridor is 15 meters. And it goes on to say that variances are required to adjust, to accommodate the request of the proponent. I just had a question about I guess I have a question of why. The 15-meter setback that exists currently, according to that bylaw, I could guess at why that is. I could guess at it from an historical perspective. But what I'm really driving at is it reflective as it currently stands of what is likely to develop along Hampton Road going forward as we move towards more multi-unit housing projects? Now, I'm not saying we're going to turn into a full-on row of apartment buildings and there will be no freestanding houses. I think we've covered that before. But I wonder if the spirit of that bylaw is related to beauty of frontage of a property. Is it related to safety because you've got higher speeds and assumedly higher traffic? Maybe not higher speeds, but certainly more traffic. We've got a little 4-lane section of Hampton Road down at the bottom by the Tim Hortons and the plaza and whatnot. I just wondered if you're able to speak at all to what drives that, because I see that the variances are required. The PAC is comfortable, it seems, with moving forward. I'm comfortable with it as well. And I just wonder if it's maybe a little out of date, and that's why I'm wondering about it. I would appreciate your thoughts.
Mr. Coburn.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to Councillor Bigger, and I'll give my response, and obviously the Director of Engineering may have additional. So we have to recognize that Hampton Road Route 100 is a designated highway, so it falls under provincial requirements, and that setback is normally that 15 meters, the wider setback for in the event that obviously development or construction of that road would look at possibly having to be widened. So you want structures back as far as to not impact them. So it also looks at in terms of given the highway itself, looking at what impacts it would just have in terms of residents living along that particular route. So it's also sort of a safety issue. So as we move forward in terms of upgrades to the Hampton Road, we would obviously want to work within any existing right-of-ways that we have and use that because once you get out into beyond the right-of-way, then you're getting into land acquisition and those types of things, which can present challenges in terms of acquiring the land and developing accordingly. So we recognize that sort of the historic side of things is there in terms of the setback. So when these developments come to us, we do look at the location along the Hampton Road. We look at what is the long-term perspective of development, and we take that into consideration. This particular development, they're set at about that 7.5 meter, 25-foot setback, if you will. There is room to adjust, to move the buildings a little slightly closer if required. That's why the variances aren't granted at this stage, because we recognize that doesn't really get triggered until we actually have a application to put shovel in the ground. So we would look at that point in time. But even at this sort of stage and at a sort of a overall perspective, we do look at what's coming and what potential impacts it does have. So if there's anything else, I can defer to Director of Engineering.
Thank you. I'm just going to go to Deputy Mayor Scryer, and then I'll come back to you, Councillor Bigger, if that's... Oh.
What he said.
Well, and that's why I asked, because the light isn't flashing here, so not over there either.
Oh, thank you. I do have a couple of questions. I know Councillor Bigger only got one answered, so I'm curious about the water, the EIA. By reducing the number of units by 3, it automatically goes to a hydrogeological study. So what's the difference? Why wouldn't you do an EIA and sort of get all the information? Because down the road, there may be a chance to develop even further. And, you know, we hope the water will be there. There's no guarantee. So I'm just wondering if you did an EIA right up the front, that would answer a lot of questions in my mind. That's one question I have. And the other one is the ownership of the street. I think it's going to be called Sunflower. Does that then become part of the town's responsibility to plow that street and maintain that street? And I have a few more, but I'll limit my questions.
Thank you. If we can just limit them until we can go back and forth. Mr. Colburn.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to the Deputy Mayor. So the actual trigger for an EIA as it relates to residential development is the water consumption. So there isn't any other factors. So they have the guidelines from the province basically says if you have a residential development that has the capacity to pull more than 50 cubic meters of water out of the ground within a 24-hour period, it triggers an EIA. So they actually give you a formula based on multi-residential, number of bedrooms. It's based on the number of bedrooms in the development. And that comes out, here's what it is. If you're below that, then they're going to refer and say, well, your development doesn't meet the threshold. Why are you triggering an EIA? So there isn't like other criteria that it says is, out of the 5 items, you're hitting 3, you trigger an EIA. It's actually, if it's a development serviced by a well and you're more than 50 cubic meters a day, it automatically triggers an EIA. The street, the proposed ownership for the street at this stage is public. So the town would take ownership, plow it, maintain it.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Colburn. Councillor Bigger, did you have another question, or was it just, okay? All right, thank you. Now, a motion may be, Deputy Mayor.
I just have another question. This would be for Ms. Lane. Ms. Lane, you mentioned tonight that it's going to be a combination of ownership and rental. Do you have a ratio of that in your mind? And
Not nailed down, but I'm thinking about 30% rental, 70% ownership.
so 30% rental and 70% condominium through the Condominium Act. And
It would all be through the Condominium Act, even the rentals.
Oh, okay. And will you own the rentals?
Yes.
Like, are you renting them for your employees, or you're going to
No.
do market rentals?
No, they'll be for clients who need
Market
to age in place.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. And finally, a motion may be presented and voted upon. Councillor Olson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that council thank Ms. Lane for the public hearing presentation and instruct staff to prepare a development agreement for execution prior to third and final reading of the proposed zoning bylaw and municipal plan amendments.
Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Olson, seconded by Councillor Bigger. On the question. Seeing there aren't any, please vote. Councillor Bigger, is your voting is not coming up? And Deputy Mayor. Deputy Mayor, in favor? Motion carried 7-0. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Ms. Lane. Item number 7, previous minutes of the last meeting. Councillor Donovan.
Thank you. I'd move that the minutes for the March 18th, 2025 regular meeting be approved as presented.
It's been moved by Councillor Donovan, seconded by Councillor Thompson. On the question, please vote. There's in favor. Councillor Bigger? Thank you. Motion carried 7-0. Item number 8, unfinished business. Housing Action Strategy, verbal report from Planning and Development Services Manager Dwight Colburn. Thank you, Mr. Colburn.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to council, as I said earlier, you're gonna get tired of seeing me this year. So I'm holding to that promise. The Housing Action Strategy, we're at a stage, the request before council tonight is that council would move to adopt the strategy so that we can move forward with it, starting to look at the action items that are in there, some 21 action items that are basically into 4 strategic buckets, if you will. So just an overview, this was initiated about a year ago. We went through public engagement, multiple sessions. We arrived at a background document from which a housing needs assessment and action strategy which was developed. Council struck a housing committee. This strategy went through that committee for review. There were some recommendations in terms of some changes, modifications to the strategy as presented. That was undertaken and has been implemented. At the previous council meeting, I'm trying to work the date here, March 18th? Am I right? Yeah, March 18th. Dylan did present the action strategy with an overview of its findings. Just in summary, basically, as we're all aware, the majority of residential development in Quispam is single detached, about 80 to 85% of that. There is a need for diversifying housing stock, different styles, from multi-residential to terrace to duplexes, to start looking at providing more units on per lot as best that we can, given the infrastructure that we have. We're looking at over the next 20 years, if we take a middle-of-the-road approach at 1.5%, we're looking at 1.5% each year in terms of growth. We're looking at the need for just under 8,500 new residence units in 25 years. So to meet that projected growth, we're looking at essentially about 3,100 units or housing units by 2050, or 125 units per year. So in terms of the action strategy, there are 4 strategic buckets. As I mentioned, the strategy basically looks at very few in terms of resources, the level of effort, and then the actual timeline, starting in 2026, taking out to about 2031, which is a 5-year item. Obviously, we would continue to monitor this plan as we move forward, and then review and revisit and rework accordingly. So their strategic buckets are housing policy and planning, development infrastructure, partnerships and engagement, and affordable housing and livability. Each of these buckets have specific action items underneath them. Okay. For example, in terms of housing and policy and planning, you have introduced policy municipal plan to prioritizing different housing types, and then obviously the steps that would take that. So there's some 21 of these in the plan. So at this stage tonight, I guess my request of council is that we have developed this plan. It's been presented to council on multiple occasions. It's gone through the housing committee for review and changes which have been implemented. It's been presented to council, and tonight, from a planning perspective and on behalf of the team and the municipality, I am seeking that council adopt the strategy as presented so we can start moving forward on the action items as they are detailed in the plan. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Mr. Colburn. And certainly this is a very robust housing plan, that housing action strategy that we've needed, and this has responded to that need and the need for appropriate and affordable housing. And I like the idea that we developed a comprehensive housing action strategy to understand the current situation and anticipate future demands for housing in our community right here in Quispamsis. And this report summarizes the thorough process of stakeholder engagement, community input, and planning, all aimed at creating actionable steps that reflect the town's collective vision for a healthy and vibrant housing market. And that's what we are trying to create. So thank you for all the work that your team has done on this, and also to Dylan. So we will go now to a vote on this. Councillor Olson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Be it resolved that council adopt the Quispamsis Housing Action Strategy as presented.
Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Olson, seconded by Councillor Donovan. On the question. Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to Your Worship. Thank you, Mr. Colburn. There's two things that I just would like clarification on. On the summary and the action strategy, page 15 of 18, it talks about we research giving federal or financial incentives to the home builders. Are we talking about Quispamsis taxpayer money to the home builders, or are we talking about government grants and things for low cost housing and subsidies like that? I'm just wondering because we don't seem to have a problem with building right now. So is that Quispamsis taxpayer money, or is that just provincial federal assistance?
Thank you for the question, through Your Worship, to Councillor Miller. So the way the policy is written is that we would look at obviously reaching out through additional resources to support that type of incentive. One of the benefits of those who are lucky enough to get Housing Accelerator Fund, if I may, is that they have automatically implemented these incentives. And they are very clear and very forthright in saying thank you to the Housing Accelerator Fund that we are able to do this. And they provide X number of dollars per door through a grant program. That would be a similar thing that we would be looking at, obviously reaching out to federal, provincial, and whatever buckets are out there that we could potentially draw from to support this. And you are correct, and I think as a municipality we can be proud to say that we've never had to go and lobby and try to get developers to come to Quispamsis. We are a very much, I think, a great municipality to work with. However, having this policy and action in place means that if we ever get to that point, or if we decide that we need to implement incentives to be competitive, then it's there. And then we can step back and say, how are we going to do this? We've reached out, we've tapped every bucket, kicked every bucket, and there's nothing in them. Do we want to look at implementing our own incentive program? So it's not a straight, we're doing this. It would require some planning, some deliberation on how we can do this moving forward. But it needs to be an item in our action plan, so it's there, it's recognized, and it's something that we can build on.
No, that's perfect. Thank you very much. It clarifies that, and as I read it as well, it says to research and that, not necessarily do. The only other, so I'm 100% for that. The only question, and I don't have my friends from Dillon here, is I wanted to question them on when they were saying that we can raise our tax rate because we have a higher income. Income and tax rate aren't the same thing, because we've also got, when they compare differences, our assessment growth is going up higher than everybody else. So it was just a comment that I would love to have asked our Dillon friends to see why they have a recommendation there, because I think that personally was out of scope of their context. Housing is one thing. Telling us what to do and raise our tax rate is not theirs. But I fully support the motions on that first 1 to 15 page, or 1 to 18. Thank you.
If, through Your Worship, if I may, in terms of, I guess, clarification, the intent or the wording here is to look at additional revenue, not necessarily going right to sort of increasing taxes, but recognizing it may be required at some point in time to support housing and those types of initiatives. So that was sort of the intent of that wording. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Miller. Thank you, Mr. Colburn. Next, Councillor Luck, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Mr. Colburn. So again, I think this is wonderful. I'm really happy to see that we do have a plan, just because, typically when you have a plan, things get done eventually, which is great. One of the things, and I apologize, it's not loading, so I can't answer the question myself to see if it's there or not, but I guess as I was thinking about this, it is a bit concerning that, what's growing is our senior population. I mean, that's our reality. And I guess depending on the additional 8,500 residents, depending on what that looks like in terms of the projected growth, maybe that will change. But it does definitely speak to more multi-density units, which one of the things that I do remember that they spoke about in terms of developing infrastructure is water, which is wonderful. But I'm also wondering how our master transportation plan and kind of the other infrastructure that we're going to see because there's going to be more cars. It might be one apartment building, but that one apartment building has umpteen more vehicles and all those kinds of things. So I'm just wondering how the master transportation plan, knowing that, we are going to be pushing for more residential builds, how does that all complement each other? And it might have been in there in terms of one of the action plans, but unfortunately I can't load it. So if you could maybe speak to that, that would be great.
Thank you for the question. Through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Luck. The Transportation Master Plan does have an action item in there that talks about the need to start looking at alternate forms of transportation to support densification of housing. So there is a connection between these two plans. So we have to recognize, yes, we're moving towards more multi-residential, but what we're trying to do is actually sort of pick core areas. So if you look at our focus is actually developing this core area, creating a town center, which means it would at least provide a little more appetite, if you will, for public transportation on the main corridors, even if that is some sort of modification to the current COMEX in hopes. And if I was allowed to get on my soapbox of public transportation, I would, but I think we're restricted by time. But yeah, so that's what that is to push for that. And that's part of this plan, is to start pushing and lobbying and saying, we need this. If you want to support increased density in the area, then we need public transportation. So that is where we need to go.
Can I ask, can you speak to other forms of transportation besides public transportation? Like, I guess I'm just thinking, if it is going to be kind of a main core, like active transportation.
It includes active transportation, bike lanes, walkability, all of those types of things. And as we go through this exercise of revitalizing the Hampton Road, modernizing it, those are the things we're looking at, is how do we make this core area more walkable, more accessible, and then we start to pan that out to say, okay, how do we upgrade the feeders into that, make that more walkable, those types of things. So it's multimodal transportation. And this plan assists with driving that forward.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Luck. Thank you, Mr. Colburn. Deputy Mayor, please.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I'd like to thank Mr. Colburn and his team on all the work they've done on the file and the Housing Committee. It's been a long time coming. We started this quite a long time ago, speaking about this. It'll be 4 years that we started talking about this, so it's nice to see it adopted or will be adopted and completed. I just wanted to mention that this, it's funny how as much as you're different that you are alike, because I sit on the community development for the Fundy Regional Service, and we've been talking a lot about housing, and it's the same thing about the seniors and walkability and being able to get to and from to get your groceries. And so as much as we're different, we are the same. And so I'm very pleased to see that this is coming forward tonight. Thank you, Mr. Colburn.
Thank you. And just when we look at Quispamsis as the 6th largest municipality in New Brunswick and the 2nd largest in our region, and to see the growth that we have experienced over the last, particularly in the last 4 or 5 years, it is growing exponentially. And this is coming at the right time. So even though it took us a few years to get it going, it took that time to plant the seed and for the work to be done. So the other thing that's good about this is that it will be available now to developers, so that if they are looking for grant money, they will have this in hand to go forward and make their applications for grants as well. So thank you very much, Mr. Colburn. It's certainly, as I say, it's a very robust document and something that we're very pleased with. So thank you.
Thank you.
And we have a vote. It's been moved by Councillor Olson, seconded by Councillor Donovan. On the question, no further. Please vote. Motion carried 7-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Worship. If you would oblige me 30 seconds, which I used up 2 minutes ago, just to give council a heads up and to a couple of things. One is we have made an application to the CHIF program, which is the Canadian Housing Infrastructure Program, which was referred to earlier tonight. It is actually a direct stream, so it doesn't come through the province. It's from the feds directly to the municipalities. There are actually two streams. One is a direct stream, and the other one is actually through the province if there are bigger infrastructure asks in excess of $1 million, $100 million. We didn't ask for $100 million, but we did make an application specifically for the water system. And I would also like to, on behalf of my team, just say thank you to Mr. Willett from the FRC for a letter of support, as well as from our MLA. Those things go a long way in supporting those applications. So I'd like to publicly thank them on behalf of the team and in making the application. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you very much. Nice to acknowledge Mr. Willett and Minister Kennedy. Correspondence, there is none. Bylaws. Third and final reading be given to an amendment to bylaw number 024, a bylaw of the municipality of Quispamsis respecting water utility as outlined in amendment number 024-21. Councillor Thompson.
You just read it.
You move that?
I moved that.
It's been moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Bigger. On the question. Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to our treasurer. But we did bill everybody at $69. Okay, that was, I've already paid my annual bill. I just didn't know if I was getting an extra one. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. On the question, please vote. Motion carried 7-0. Item number 11, new business. Item number 11A. Award of RFP number 2025 TQ 03-6. Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would move the council award RFQ number 2025 TQ 03-6 to the low bid from Brown's Paving for the Part A bid price of $54,000 exclusive of HST. Part B would be considered null and void as the timing for staff to pre-fill sandbags would be unachievable. Agreement will only be awarded if emergency measures are required.
Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Miller, seconded by Councillor Olson. On the question. Please vote. Motion carried 7-0. Award of tender number 2025 TQ 03-5. Councillor Olson.
I'd move council awarded tender number 2025 TQ 03-5 for the supply of 1-ton 2025 6x4 cab and chassis truck to the sole bidder, Universal Truck and Trailer, for the bid price of $234,250 plus HST plates and tire levy.
Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Olson, seconded by Deputy Mayor Scryer. On the question. Please vote. Motion carried 7-0. Item 11C, 2028 Canada Community Building Fund Investment Plan. Councillor Donovan.
Thank you. I'd move that the document entitled Town of Quispamsis 2024 to 2028 Capital Investment Plan for the Canada Community Building Fund, CCBF, be adopted.
It's been moved by Councillor Donovan, seconded by Councillor Bigger. On the question. Please vote. Motion carried 7-0. 11D, application for financing. Councillor Olson.
Yes, I'd move council resolve that the clerk and/or treasurer and/or mayor be authorized to issue and sell to the New Brunswick Municipal Finance Corporation a local government of Quispamsis debenture in the amount of $1,650,000 on such terms and conditions as are recommended by the New Brunswick Municipal Finance Corporation, and be it resolved that the local government of Quispamsis agree to issue post-dated checks payable to the New Brunswick Municipal Finance Corporation as and when they are requested in payment of principal and interest charges on the above debenture.
Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Olson, seconded by Councillor Miller. On the question, please vote. Motion carried 7-0. Item 12, reports there for your viewing. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Your Worship, and I was reading a couple of reports that sort of tweaked my interest. First of all, the one by the regional, Canada Cases Regional Police. I noticed in some of their stats that the intimate partner violence has continued to go up, and also sexual assaults. And that caused great concern for me, wondering, you know, should we be having the chief come and speak to us about this? I know everything is on the rise, but I want to make sure that when I looked at the sexual assault or the domestic, intimate domestic partner violence, you know, I know we have KV Domestic Violence Outreach. I'd like to know how they're working with the police, what the whole picture is for support in the valley for women going through this. So I'll leave that with yourself and Councillor Luck to talk about, and with the Police Commission, if there's something that you could give us a more updated view of what's happening there. The second one that I was very interested in was the Community in Bloom. And I know that years and years ago, some of you remember how big this was, Community in Bloom. Everybody was jumping on the bandwagon, and I think that might be when Quispam really got into growing flowers. We hired a horticulturalist, and things just bloomed. And I thought, wouldn't it be nice if we got back into that a little bit? We do such a great job with flowers. I know that the schools come early in the year or last year and planted flowers already for this year, and I just thought it may be something that staff could take a look at and see if that would be something that would be of interest to the town. So I wouldn't put a motion forward. I would just ask that staff maybe take a look at it and let us know what they think. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to ask Councillor Bigger and Councillor Luck if they will take your concern back to the police board. Communities in Bloom. I do hear from Councillor Barry Ogden from St. John every year. He was the initiator of the Communities in Bloom, and we do have the children from various schools go to the and plant in April. I believe it's in this month that we'll go and plant some of the marigold seeds, and then in June we'll plant them around the town properties. So I don't know that we still call it Communities in Bloom, but it does come from Councillor Ogden's, I guess, a little nudge every now and then, because it is the marigolds that we do use.
That's right, Your Worship, and there is a category that just says friends. So it may not be really complicated just to be a friend of the, encouraging our neighborhoods, and I'm sure the businesses would love to get into the action, so thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Bigger, please.
Thank you, Worship. Appreciate the Deputy Mayor's interest in the police report, and as you just mentioned, the Vice Chair of our police board and myself will certainly reflect on that back in discussion. I'm sure they'll be interested to hear the thoughts of the council. You know, I wanted to just point out, in case you missed it, in the training report for March that the chief supplied, there was a week of training on advanced sexual offense investigators training that just finished, actually. That was done in Ottawa. And we had people attending that. So there's certainly a focus there. And there is discussion, I will say. I don't think I'm speaking out of school here. You can stop me if you think I'm wrong, but we've had a couple of, we have a member of the SLT who speaks to, I think it's spoken of, the fact that we see an increase in these incidents. And so there's a very keen focus on addressing that in our community. And I would expect that this training, for example, is a reflection of, trying to manage that. So appreciate your insight on that. And I'll ask our vice chair from the police board if she wants to add to that.
I'm going to go to Mr. Watson first.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you, just to follow up to the conversation around the opportunity to explore the intimate partner violence and sexual assault files in a bit more detail at the community level. I do note that the outgoing and incoming police chief are here at our next council meeting, and I meet with the incoming chief later this week, so I can certainly raise it at that time if that's the police board representative's wish and council's wish, with an intention to explore those subjects in a bit more detail at next council.
Thank you, Mr. Watson. Councillor Luck, please.
Thank you, Worship. He took the words out of my mouth. I was going to actually say that I believe he's coming to, the new chief, Chief Young, is planning on coming to kind of get to know the council. So if CAO Watson wants to relay that message, that will save me an email. So that would be great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And do we have business arrangement? No. Okay. I didn't pull one down. Are we ready for an adjournment? Adjournment has been moved by Councillor Olson, seconded by Councillor Thompson. On the question, please vote. Motion carried 7-0. Have a good evening, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your week.